little tiny items that need to be tidied up that are questions that people have had, where each question probably represents 20 more people who have the same question. So, Doug, would you take charge of that and just we'll go through these one at a time.
Okay.
Take careful notes because these are questions that are valid questions that each of you as an instructor will be confronted with, and you need to have an understanding of the answers that you can give people.
Okay, question number 1. What is the point holding procedure for vertebral disc regeneration? I would say the main procedure would be to find the pain and push. I mean, basically get in there exactly where you know the problem is between the two vertebrae and work on it to the point that the person can lovingly and willingly endure. I mean, obviously you might have to, in many cases, you might have to build them up to that. You might have to work with, most of the time, you're probably going to have to do the STOs and the endocrine points and have them on a good nutritional program for a while before you're going to attempt that. But ultimately, when they're ready for that, it's really going to basically be find the pain and push. I mean, just get in there and work in the area that you need to work.
Now, bottom line, a lot of people feel, well, let's just go right on this area and go to work on it now. Here's where you need to be skillful at looking at the eye to see if what kind of deterioration is in the spinal area. So you first of all check in the sclera and check in the iris and find out what you have to work with there. If in doubt, you don't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And if you have any question at all about it, you don't touch it. If you intuitively have a feeling wherein there are many, many people who are just really a strong constitution, they have been on a good program, and you can very gently go in with a pair of thumbs, and sometimes that thing will correct within 5 or 10 minutes. They get the burning in the area, everything moves back into line, everything regenerates, and they're absolutely fine. That is the exception and never the rule. The rule would be you start from scratch on the flow sheet, start, as Doug has suggested, with the STO point, make sure the entire endocrine system is working properly, and then once the endocrine system is working properly and the person is nutritionally prepared, you know that the hormones are going to be secreted, which will be necessary as a catalyst for the exothermic and endothermic reaction, which is necessary to take place during any type of bone structure regeneration. And then you very gently go in with your thumbs and just touch it, work with it very, very gently, and let the whole thing regrow. And sometimes the bone structures will regrow within 10, 12 minutes if a person has been sufficiently prepared ahead of time. Any questions? Doug.
I might add that fixing up a slipped disc or a ruptured disc is quite feasible with body electronics. We've had situations in the past where we've had people that have actually had the discs surgically removed and a spinal fusion performed, and people in that situation have had full regeneration of the disc. So fixing one that's still there is obviously quite a bit easier than fixing one that isn't there anymore.
We've had cases even where the vertebrae was totally destroyed, and it was held in place with the Harrington rods. And even the vertebrae itself has totally regenerated with the discs on each side of it. And this is something that we need to know that this can be done. But it will take tremendous preparation ahead of time and the ability to endure the pain of the trauma which caused the disintegration or destruction of the disc and the vertebrae to begin with. Okay, we've exhausted our ignorance here. Any questions? Okay.
I'm not sure if I recall or not that the
speak into it.
The ischial tuberosity point, is that used for disc regeneration as well?
Pardon me?
The ischial tuberosity point.
Yes.
Is that involved also? I think I remember that from a seminar.
Yes.
How do you put the two together?
You do the ischial tuberosity first before you touch the lower back, for example, because the ischial tuberosity oftentimes will help to heal that lower back without even touching the lower back. And the same thing would be true about the pubic bones. Oftentimes that will help in regenerating things pertaining to lower back, sacral areas, tailbone areas. And then, of course, the triple axis clavicle, which will help with the upper part of the body.
So do those first, maybe? And
Yes, by all means. Yep.
Yeah, what do you mean by gently?
You give the person very little pain because in a degenerated area, oftentimes you have no feeling there whatsoever. If you have no feeling there whatsoever and the thing is numb, you may have to work with it for quite a little while before the calcifications or the distortions in the bone start to move and start to shift. Then the pain comes in. So you don't just, if the person has no feeling there and they have numbness there, realize that you don't want to still apply a lot of pressure because you have degenerated bone tissue. So you just very gently put your thumb there and then slowly wait it out until things begin to happen. If things don't happen, then you have to go toward the head and find the first spot where there's pain and then hold that spot, and that will help to bring the nerve supply into the lower part of that spinal area which has been injured. Are you with me on that? So like if, for example, let's say you're on, the problem is on T10, which would be the 10th thoracic vertebrae. You go back maybe to T8, where there's pain, and you work on T8 and get all the calcification dissolved out of T8, and then that brings the nerve supply down into T9 and T10. Then you go to T9 and work all the calcification out of that because you have feeling there now, and that'll bring the nerve supply into the other area, which may have healed just in the process of holding the calcification at T9. Okay? Now's the time for questions in this area.
Hello. John, I think you've partly answered my question. It's about calcifications. I have a lot of calcification here and in my lower back.
You had?
I had. I still have a bit, it feels like.
Not like it was.
No. If that's the case, do you deal with those calcifications first before going to the ischial tuberosity or not?
Sometimes if you have in the lower back, you have a lot of numbness from injury, you can work on the calcifications and nothing happens. You go to the ischial tuberosity and you hold that properly, and then all of a sudden you start having feeling in the area that you didn't have before. Now remember, don't limit yourselves just to the ischial tuberosity. You may have areas of real tenderness which are unique to each individual somewhere on the sacral area. And so there might be about 20 different points that can be activated all over the sacral area, above the tailbone, and where the ischial tuberosity will turn everything on for you. And then you work on that areas of the sacrum where the sacrum may have been injured, where the feeling now comes back into the sacrum. But find the pain and push, and this is the general rule. And you'll find that the pain for one person will not always be pain for another person. Because one person may fall on their left sacrum during a time of roller skating on a sidewalk. Another person will fall on their rear end going down the stairs, and hit themselves right square in the middle. Another person, it might be on the right side. And so everyone's going to have a different spot of pain which inflicted the injury on the area, causing perhaps the anterior displacement or the distortion in the lumbar spine where the calcifications are. Okay?
Good morning. Just a point of clarification. Is it in fact a generalisation or an overgeneralisation to start at the upper sacrum and work up the spine, assuming that the spine may correct on the way up?
You'll find, Bob, that years ago we had to start at the bottom and work up. That's years ago. Now you start with the STO point and the calcifications up and down the spine all dissolve. Or you take one spot in the middle of the spine and the tailbone dissolves. I don't have an answer for that anymore because anything can cause anything. We're into that realm. It's a matter of how much pain the person is capable of individually enduring, and that will determine which calcifications on which spinal areas will dissolve. And it just, I don't have an answer that's clear anymore in my mind, because it can vary from one person to the next. Now, if you don't know what to do, you start at the bottom and work up. If you're confused or not sure. And that way you're always starting at the spot furthest from the brain, and the nerve supply will work through the injured areas that you're working on if you start at the tailbone, for example, and then work on up. You can't go wrong with that. It may be a little slower, but also it may be a little more thorough.
Yeah, I hope you haven't covered this before, but if it's a calcification, you use your elbow on the side of it. Is that right? Not right on top of it. But if it's a slip disc, you then use your thumbs gently in between the actual disc.
That would be correct. Unless you're a great big man on a little lady, use your thumb.
On the calcification.
Because that's all the pressure you'll need.
But it's still just
if you're
on
little,
the side.
if you're a little lady, and you got a big man there, the elbow may not be big enough or strong enough to get the pressure necessary to elicit the pain that's locked into that crystal.
Yeah, but it's on the side, not directly on it.
About a 45-degree angle going into it, yes.
And the other one's just right between where the disc is.
Yes, right.
Okay.
Right where the pain is. And that'll vary where the pain is. The pain can go off to the side or right in the middle. It'll vary. Okay?
I've never seen a tumor or anything, so I'm just wondering, John, could it look like a calcification if there was one? Or, could one be muddled up could one be pressing a tumor rather than a calcification?
The answer is yes, and this is where you have to be skillful at looking at the iris of the eye to see what you're working with. And if you have a large, let's say where you have your swollen fibers with a black hole in the center of it, where you have your Asperger's effect, or where you have your Medusa effect, leave it alone. If you have a big black pigmentation or even a brown bush, leave it alone. And wait until that's cleared up nutritionally. Then you can go in with gentle confidence. Okay? I hope you understand what I mean by gentle. Whenever you have deterioration of a spine, or even the possibility of it, you have to be excessively careful. If, for example, if you have an area like in arthritic areas where you have deterioration of the joint itself, you start very, very gently to where where the person can endure the pain, and then gradually increase the pain. And within a half an hour to an hour sometimes, you'll have the regeneration of that particular bone structure. Sometimes it'll take a little longer. But the thing is, it's the consistency which will make it work. Now, oftentimes, if you're dealing with deterioration, for example, in the arm, you go to the triple axis clavicle first. Case in point, Wolf, come up here, please. I want to clarify this again. Wolf in his right arm, in the way up here in the bone structure above the elbow, this is where it was broken and where it had been numb for 33 years. Now, when I first went in on this, he had no pain on it whatsoever. I could not work on it, and I could not elicit pain in this area, no matter how hard or where I pushed. So what we had to do was we had to go back up to the clavicle, the triple axis clavicle, and get the circulation and nerve supply down through that area to the break. And that's how far it went. It went no further. So the break kept the energy flow from going down through the rest of the arm. Now, this time when I went in with my elbow and put my weight on it, full tilt, and then he felt the pain, he felt the numbness go down the arm, and then the tingling in the arm all the way down to the fingers, and then everything, when it was all over and done with, I could press as hard as I wanted to on that area of injury, and even though he had feeling, he had no pain. The pain was literally completely gone, and there's nothing left to work on. Is that correct, Wolf? Correct. Now, the same thing will hold true to the deterioration of a bone where the bone heals improperly, and the same thing will hold true down here. As long as there's pain there, that we are eliciting, that's locked into the crystallization and the injury, then that will slowly come out, and it'll slowly come out, and after a while I can put my whole elbow on this area, which I have done in the past to deteriorated bone structures here, and I put my full weight and elbow, and there's no pain whatsoever, and everything's back working order. Now, some of you may not have that confidence yet. If you don't have that confidence, don't do it. Don't experiment, but work within a framework of what is real and certain to you, and then gradually expand that reality and certainty. Thank you, Wolf. Simon, you had a question, sir. Then Wolf.
Yeah, John, now I'm a bit confused about this spine. If we've got a problem in the lower spine, why wouldn't we start at the top to get the nerve supply down to that area before we work on it?
That's correct procedure.
Yeah. Okay, so in what cases would we start at the bottom to work up then?
Sometimes there's feeling all the way up and down through the spine and no numb areas. And then if you work at the bottom and unite that whole thing from the brain to the tailbone together, so to speak, then all of the calcification will dissolve from the tailbone on up at times. But when you get a lot of burning there, oftentimes you get the cycling because you use up the minerals too quickly. And therefore you have to go back to the drawing board, get the person remineralized, and then things come right.
There's an important principle here, Simon. If it doesn't work that way, try it the other way.
Okay, Wolf.
Now, you said if there is a tumor in the spine, you will see it in the iris of the eye. But I mean, my question is, do you always, if a person has a tumor, say in the spine, for example, is it always manifested in the iris, or are there cases where it isn't?
If you have heavy mucoprotein, you won't see it. If you have heavy brown chromatophores, you won't see it. But if you use, as David Lloyd showed us, if you use a infrared type picture, you'll see the big black hole sitting there under the, in other words, there will be an absence of heat in that particular area, which will come up then as that black hole.
But now if you don't have a film like this or something, is there any other way of sort of feeling it or dealing with it just to be safe?
To be safe, have an x-ray and then take lots of niacin, run the x-ray out. Okay? And that way you have a record of it. And you'll find that, for example, Wolf, a person will go in for a tooth x-ray. And then they'll take a lot of niacin and they'll have a red, ruddy flush in this area where the x-ray was for about a week or so, and then it's gone. And the same thing will be true with an x-ray or x-ray radiation, for example, of any kind on the human body.
Okay, number 2. What is the BE procedure for whiplash? It would depend in part on whether we're dealing with a recent situation or something that happened quite a while in the past. A lot of times if you have a person who's on a pretty good program to begin with and whose spine has been in reasonable shape and they're already doing point holding, a lot of times in those situations, if they get a whiplash from some kind of car accident, a lot of times you can fix it right up with a single point holding, basically just by getting in there and working on the sore spots. On the other hand, if it's somebody that's never been on a program before and it's either a recent or something that happened further in the past, you may have to do a lot of preliminary work, as we've just been discussing, with STO and endocrine points and a good nutritional program and all the rest. But the basics are still going to be that you're going to get in there and find the pain and push. And in addition to working on the neck, in terms of the bone structures of the neck, you're going to have to address a lot of the spasm and damage to the soft tissue, and particularly the musculature of the neck. So you're going to need to get in there and actually find the sore spots on the various muscles in the neck. Would be a good place to start as well.
Has anybody had a real severe whiplash? Who has had a whiplash where the whiplash is still bothering them at this time? Who's that clear in the back? Ken, is that you? Come on up here, sir. I want Ken to tell the story about his whiplash.
In March of 1991, I was skiing along at about 60 kilometers an hour and hit a rope which went into my mouth and tipped my head back like that and off to one side, and it broke the maxilla out. And since then, I've had a lot of pain in the neck. It wasn't until actually last summer and the fall when I got on the body electronics program that I started to get more mobility. It as well reflexed to my lower back and my sacral area, which showed up beautifully in the iris of my eye. There still is some restriction in muscle movement and some pain at times. If I'm doing a lot of work bending over my neck, the muscles fatigue easily, and there seems to still be a few adhesions in the area.
Are you ready, sir?
Let's go.
Okay, there will be a time when you'll go back through the actual physical activity of whipping your neck. When that happens, let it rip, okay? And you'll feel the head will go back into the position, in the same position it was when you had the, when you nearly had your head taken off, okay? Just go for it and let it happen. And Doug, go. I'll do my thing. First of all, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for calcifications, and there is a real problem right here between the first and second cervical, right on the first cervical, in fact. And you feel this right here, sir? Okay, now what I'm going to do, this is where the problem is. It's where the head was jerked back and it nearly displaced the first cervical vertebrae. And we're going to go over this now. And right in here you have pain. I'm going to take my thumb, and I have little thumbs, okay? But the thing is, they get the job done. Now, if you're watching, all I'm doing is taking my thumb and bringing it into where we have swollen, calcified ligaments right at the base of the skull, going into the area of the first cervical vertebrae at the top here. And Ken, if you turn your body around here a little bit. I'm going to go right up under the skull and dissolve all those calcifications on this side, where he'll still have a lot of neck pain coming down, primarily down the left side, I assume. Is this correct, Ken?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but the main trauma will be located right here. So instead of having a straight shot like this coming forward, it's kind of twisted at the same time, possibly, kind of going like the,
Yeah, it was
like this, and put the injury right in that area of where to go. Right up in here.
Uh-huh.
You feel that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now I'm just going to do my thing, and I want you to talk, as I'm talking to you, I want you to tell the class exactly what's going on inside your body, inside your head, and especially in this area through here. Okay, now this is not small potatoes. I'm putting heavy, heavy pressure on this. Doug, could you turn this around so your back is not going to occlude the visual aspect? Get around on this side, see?
Glenn, I'm going to be leaning across his face.
That's just fine.
Okay.
He won't even know you're there when I get my thumb in here. Okay, here we go, Ken. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, now tell me when I get the pain.
Oh, you got it.
Okay, tell me when the burning starts right up into the head.
Now.
Feel the burning. Got it?
Yeah.
Here it goes. Better than a cranial. Talk to me. What's happening?
Shooting pain like a hot iron strap across my head, down into my shoulder, down into my back, into my sacrum.
All the way to the sacrum?
Yeah.
Oh, you got a good whiplash. Feel it.
Yeah.
Couldn't be any better. You got a good one. Feel it now. Now feel that rope just taking your head right off.
Yeah.
Feel it. Feel it. Feel the head go back and just go through the whole bit.
Crunching sounds.
All the way.
Arm, back, sacrum, head, all burning. Burning on the left side of my head. Really good. Oh, pain in the left eye. Whole tingling throughout my body now.
Pain's going away. Let me get a little more grip on it.
Yeah. Oh, tingling throughout the body, into my legs, into my feet, my hands. Oh, some dizziness. Oh, some numbness going. Relaxing. Still pulling on the sacrum. Oh, numbness throughout the body. Lots of numbness. Hands, knees. Oh. Forehead, burning pain. Pain in the body, in the abdomen. Sharp poker like where you're at. Still this burning, searing pain up on the side of my head, left side. Numbness in the solar plexus, in the hands, in the knees, in the calves.
Talk to me.
No.
Going right up under your skull,
Yeah.
buddy.
Not much pain in there anymore.
Oh, you're kidding me.
No. Numbness in my jaws and my teeth.
Okay, that's what I want. There we go.
Much the same numbness that I got with the triple access last week.
Good.
The
Y'all hear
mastoids.
that? Say it again on that triple axis and the numbness.
The numbness from the triple axis and the mastoids. It's like my teeth have been anesthetized with some Novocaine or whatever the freezing. Numbness in my hands and my knees still. Not much pain anymore where the thumb is. There we go. That's pretty sharp, going right up into the back of my skull. Feels like there's been a hot rod been poked right through into my brain.
Feel it?
Yeah.
Going off, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's see if I can get anything more in there. Hang on. Let your head flip.
Yeah.
It's ready for it.
Yeah.
Just let it go. Just like, keep it up straight.
Okay.
Okay, now here we go, 60 miles per hour. And out across the skiing. You got it?
Yeah.
Here's the rope coming. Now let it whip the neck.
Oh, nice crack in there.
Nice crack.
Yeah.
Anything up in here?
Yeah, a little bit of pain, numbness in the left side of my jaw where it was tore out.
Good, that's what I want. Now tell me when we get the burning in the left side of the jaw.
Okay, it's starting back around the TMJ joint.
It's what?
The burning starting around the TMJ joint.
Okay, let me go for it. Talk to me.
Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, lots.
What's happening?
Sharp pain going in my neck, down my back, up into my eyes, both eyes. Oh, my left arm is just numb.
Talk to me.
Yeah, things are pretty well staying there. No numbness in the face that's been increased at all. It's still pretty numb on the left side.
Okay, what's happening?
Oh, left arm, left shoulder, the left side of the neck, all pretty much numb. Numbness has gone out of my legs and my knees, starting to come out of my hands.
Any pain here now?
Not really. There we go. That's pretty sharp, going up across the top of my head. Can feel.
You got to go in deep, folks.
Yeah, feel my.
You got to go in deeper and deeper and deeper until you're just absolutely exhausted with pushing on the pain.
Coronal suture feels like it's starting to move. The left side has lots of sensation in it. The right side has none at all.
Ready?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Pain shooting up through my ear, through the left side. I'm seeing stars, much the same I saw when I came conscious again. Oh, that's a good amount of pain going up the left side.
Talk to me.
Oh, left side, lots of shooting pain where your thumb is. Oh, into the arm. Oh, left arm. Oh, seeing the violet. Oh, yeah, seeing the violet coming through. Oh, lots of beautiful colors. Oh, yeah, the occiput and the parietal. Oh,
Something cracked in there. You feel that?
Oh, yeah.
Something was like a watermelon hit the floor. You feel that one?
Yeah. Feeling lots of little snapping and cracking, almost like toothpicks breaking. Just lots of little snap, 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 snap. Oh, up in the coronal suture again, burning up in there. Left arm is numb and tingling.
Great way to get your tingles, Ken.
It's a good time. I'm having fun.
Okay, now I'm going to do my thing here. Let's see what's happening. Talk to me.
Shooting pain. Oh, shooting in the left side. The coronal suture is just on fire.
I want the stars.
Okay. All right, you're a star already, John. Oh,
you got the stars?
Not yet. Tingling, numbness in the left face. Oh, yeah, this is a good time. Left side, numb. Arm is numb. Shoulder. Left shoulder is numb. Lips are numb again. Left side, teeth. Numbness down the left arm.
How's the pain?
Yeah, it's there a little bit. It's there a little bit. Not much pain, though.
Okay, talk to me.
Yeah, you could push a little harder.
I don't think so.
I can't taste your thumbnail yet.
Your eyes turn dark, you know I'm there.
Yeah, lots of pain in the left side muscles. Numbness.
Okay, what's happening now?
Okay, still the coronal suture in the whole left side of the head is kind of being squeezed like in a vice. Seems to be some pretty sharpness in the... You got something there. Oh, numbness in the left arm, vein up the left side of the head.
Talk to me.
Lots of pain. Burning pain where your thumb is. Numbness in the teeth on the left side. In the head. Numbness in the face and the left arm.
I slipped down from
lots
the
of
first
jaws.
cervical where it just went nothing left in there. And I've gone from the first cervical down to the second cervical, which is now being decalcified.
Lots of pain. Lots of numbness in the left jaw.
Now, the second and third cervicals go to the trigeminal area, which is the area where he's feeling the sensations now. That's in the teeth, the face, on the left side. Back in the chair, sir.
Okay, just a moment.
Okay, here we go. How sweet the pain.
Yeah.
Okay, what's happening here?
Lots of numbness in the cheeks.
Tell me when the
lips.
numbness goes.
Okay.
See, we don't leave him in a numb state. Because if I leave him in a numb state, what happens to my thumb? I go around here like Ruth Propsting, where it stays there for weeks.
The nerves, the ulnar nerves on both hands are tingling. My little finger, the ring finger and the middle finger, each hand are just tingling sensation. I used to get a lot of, they used to go to sleep a lot if I held them in any position for any length of time, so feels good. You could probably go a little deeper.
I beg your pardon?
Yeah, you could go a little harder there. There we go. Yeah, the maxilla,
Talk to me.
The palate's going numb now.
The palate's going numb.
Yeah.
Okay, good. We didn't have that before, did we?
I don't think so. Couldn't sense it for all the other numbness. There's numbness coming, or the sensations coming back in the cheek. The numbness starting to go.
Touch your cheek on the left side and see how it's coming now.
Yeah, that's. There's more sensation there.
Good. Now, I don't feel anything right here, right now. What's going on?
No, the pain's pretty much gone.
Okay, here we go. We're going to go deeper.
Okay.
Anything there?
No.
Anything there?
There, a little bit.
Tell me when it's gone.
It's not much. You seem to be eliciting more pain on the right side than the left at this time.
I'm not on the right side.
I know.
Okay, let me just check this. I'm going to go down to one more vertebrae if I can find my thumb. There it is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you go.
Now you'll feel that all over the face.
In the ear, in the side of the face.
Feel it in the ear?
Yeah.
Okay. Now you should feel that in the palate. Got it?
Yeah, the lips are starting to go numb again, and the palate's starting to get some pressure sensation.
Y'all hear
in
this?
it.
A picture's worth 1,000 words, so it's going to take a little time, folks. Be patient on it. But once you see what's going on here, you'll see how you just find the pain and push. You dissolve the calcifications one at a time, but you get the cranial done first to prepare them for this, or they will not be able to handle it. You'll stick them into a healing crisis where they have nothing but numbness and pain, and they won't go through it. They can't go through it because they've had pain in this area that they can't confront and deal with. And so they're stuck in it because these are traumatic injuries. So you get the cranial done first as best you can. That open things up, okay? And then go from there.
I can attest to that. I tried to go through this before, and I wound up going completely numb, my whole body, and was actually had to go on some tranquilizers just to be able to to function. And obviously no cranial done. I wasn't ready for it at that time.
Okay, how's the pain here, sir?
It's pretty well melted away there.
Okay, let me see if I can find anything else there. Talk to me.
You got a little bit more there. Could go a little deeper if you could.
I can't go much deeper,
Okay.
Ken. Seriously.
There seems to be some pain. There's more of a knot feeling coming up on the right side, like between 1 and 2. That seems to be. Right
Anything
there.
here?
Just a little bit, not much.
Okay.
Just a nice relaxing massage.
Okay, my finger's coming back, frankly, and
Okay.
so in fact, my finger's back. Anything here?
Very little, very little.
Probably the tenderness from where I was pressing.
No, that's muscle soreness that's been like that for the last 5 years since there you got a little bit.
Okay, that's from my jamming my finger up under your skull.
I don't think so. Come down just a little bit, and there now go straight in from there. Seems to be something kind of sharp there.
Okay.
There you go. That's it.
I'm going to leave a little bit here, just so that you'll work this out again, and you get somebody to do the same thing I'm doing. Got the memory on that?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm going to go in on the right side now because it's okay. Anything here?
No.
Anything here?
No.
Anything here?
No.
Anything up in here?
Yeah.
Tell me when that's off.
Push harder.
I'm pushing. Limit. For me.
All right. That's a little bit of tenderness, much like you just left on the left-hand side.
Okay, I'm going to leave that there now. Ready?
Yeah.
Now, I've had a few injuries to this old body of mine, and I had an osteopath work on one particular adjustment that you'll be learning later on this week. I'm going to introduce this to you now, and this is for those people who have problems with the first cervical vertebrae. Doug, could you show where the cradle is if you would, on the skull?
On this skull or
on the skull. The cradle. Right there for the first cervical vertebrae. Now this you have to understand, that if there's a cradle there, just like a rocking chair, that the first cervical vertebrae goes back and forth like this. And that's how it allows that to happen. And if that is off in any way, when I put this vertebrae back in place, I could very well knock him out for as long as a half an hour. I went unconscious for a half an hour going back through old injuries when this osteopath put my neck in, and it's the best adjustment I ever had, and I had problems with my first cervical vertebrae up until that time. No chiropractor could put it in for me. It's a very, very gentle, simple maneuver, but extremely effective. He's already gone through the stars. He's already gone through the numbness and the unconsciousness. Chances are he won't have this effect. But chances are he will hear, if you don't hear it, you'll hear a small snap as the first cervical vertebrae goes back into position, and then the body comes right. So here is the adjustment procedure.
We'll get somebody to get the mic right next to the neck.
Okay. I simply ask Ken to put his head right here on the pectoralis major muscle, the forehead, which is all sweaty, so forgive me, but that's all right. That's the price we pay. Put it there. Now, sit up straight. Okay. Now, all I'm going to do here is put my fingers behind the occiput, right up under the first cervical, put my thumbs in front of the ear, and so I can cradle the neck and move it back. Now, if that vertebrae did not go back into place, which it may have with all the cracks and crunches we had in there, and I had one snap that sounded like a bad watermelon, what I'm going to do now is just take and just move forward like this, and just move forward. Any movement in there?
I had 2 cracks.
2 cracks, little ones. Did any stars or anything?
No.
No. So that's in. It's already in, or else that thing would have snapped. Now we'll take you through this and show this to you, and so this will be for putting that first cervical in place. Now, I want you to move around, sir, and see how you feel. Sama, keep the mic right there, and it can express all this.
I still have a little bit of numbness in my, what seems to be the ulnar innervation down my arms here, but, I feel like I just bought a sports car here. Yeah, that's, you're getting a few more cracks going here. This is wonderful. I haven't had this much movement. I couldn't do that. I couldn't look over my shoulder before either direction like that without coming to tightness.
Now for adjustment procedures on the other vertebrae, with your permission, Ken.
Please.
I haven't lost anybody yet today. Okay, I want you just to let your head fall gently to the left. This will be a triple movement. I will rotate with the heel of my hand on the jawbone. I'll rotate slightly clockwise to limit. And then I will take my fingers on the back of the spine where the vertebrae were out, and I'll push with my fingers. I'll pull this direction. Y'all got that? Doug, would you back off, please? Okay, so I'm pushing this direction with my fingers on the vertebrae of the neck. I rotate this and push this direction, and at the same time, I will take the vertebrae and push this direction with my left hand on the forehead. And so I take everything to limit as far as we can, and then I just have them breathe deep, and everything goes in.
Oh, was I supposed to breathe?
No, that's to get your attention off what I'm going to do. And those are in. Those are in nicely.
Oh, yeah.
Let me hit the other side. There's 7 vertebrae there. I think I got 8.
Oh, there goes the tingling out of my hands.
Now, do you see that? You have to know how to adjust properly. You have to know in order to get... Excuse me, Doug. In order... Just hold the head perfectly still and don't move. You have to know how to adjust properly to get the nerve supply back down in those areas that have been blocked by what we'll call the subluxation or the distortion of the positioning of the vertebrae, where they put pressure on the nerve supply, shutting that nerve supply off to the body. You can do all of the body electronics in the world you want, but if you haven't got a good adjustment on there, then you're not going to get the numbness out of the ulnar nerve down to the 4th and 5th and possibly part of the 3rd finger. How does it feel, sir?
It's still feeling the sensation coming back. Actually, it seems like it's increasing to what it was before. The back of my head seems a bit tender right now, but other than that, I can seem to see clearer here. I'm kind of looking out. Things seem a little more clearer. Feels good.
Okay, now feel the palate. That word is numb. Take your finger up there.
I can sense just by my tongue that there is more sensation on the left side when I just rub it. Before it was there, I could only feel pressure before, but now I can actually feel the skin where my tongue touches. And there's still a little bit of numbness in here, but there's more sensation over just a little ways out here. Still a little numbness in the nose, but this cheek seems to have a lot more sensation in it. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, we're definitely on our way. Now, you can't do it all at one time because sometimes you have to do the cranial, and then you get that first vertebrae, in this case where the whiplash originated, and you get that in alignment. Do you see all the pain locked in there? Do you see all the numbness and all the stars and everything that he went through? Now, how's the cheek over here on the left side?
It's still much the same it was. There seems to be a little bit more feeling in here, but also as I'm sitting here and just checking my body, my left sacral area and my left hip seem to be relaxing, where they were a little tight always before. There seems to be some new energy flow going out down into my left leg from that, so lots of reflex there. Yeah.
Okay. Now, did you see the pressure that I put on him? There was no small amount of what we'll call dainty pressure. I was putting every single bit of my strength to take him through the trauma of the burning, which you do not get by gentle, kind, sweet pressure. You follow what I'm saying? This is called hard love. You tell the person to love it, you take them through the pain, and they're going to be for a few minutes totally incapacitated. Ken went through it like a trooper. Ken, would you like to get up and move around and see how the body's working now?
I've got so much more head movement back. I had a restriction where I could get to about here before. I wouldn't be able to look over my shoulder like that because everything would just sort of lock and stop. And I don't know, it's probably going to take a half an hour or so to notice all the subtle changes, but it's quite interesting how my the back of my hip and my sacral area kind of feel like they've just been adjusted as well. And there's quite a sensation going down into that right now. So my head, I feel taller. And I feel like I'm standing up straighter. I don't know if I am or not, but sure feels that way.
You look big, Ken.
Yeah, thanks. It's wonderful. Thank you, John.
Okay. Thank you, Ken. Now, that is simply find the pain and push. But remember, bottom line, you get the thumb right up under the occiput there in the back where the hollow is. Now you can take your finger and feel right at the base of the skull a little hollow spot, and you follow that down. Get your finger out there. Let your fingers do the walking here for a few minutes. And right below that you find quite a large calcification, which is the second cervical or cervical vertebrae. Now that second cervical or cervical vertebrae is going to be kind of like a small knob there, which is real. If it's calcified, you will not feel what they call a bifurcation that is there, where it comes out kind of like where there's a space right in the middle and you have two prongs coming out. You check in your notes, check a Gray's Anatomy, look at the seventh cervical, and you can find the bifurcation on that second cervical. Most people don't have it because it's calcified, and that calcification needs to be dissolved because that is your organic computer chip full of stored trauma and memory. And everyone at one time or another has fallen on their back or fallen down the stairs, and they've had a whiplash of one sort or another. And this is something that will be absolutely invaluable for you. You can have all of the chiropractic adjustments in the world. And some people have been helped with chiropractic adjustments. I have no complaint about that whatsoever. But what I am quite concerned with is that the locked-in trauma didn't come out. Now, I hope you all will remember forever the trauma that was locked into the tissues in Ken's neck from that whiplash. That took his mouth off. Now, Ken, correct me. It took his maxilla off and it had to be sewed back on. Is that correct? All the teeth there, everything had to be sewed back on. It just split the bone and just gave him tremendous trauma. Nearly took his head off. And all that had to go back through that, and I think we went back through most of that pain today. And you felt that. And it burned. And it burned. And it burned. And that's what we're looking for with point holding, to get to that point of such tremendous pressure, which you have to get into some position, and you give it your all, and sometimes your all isn't enough. You just have to push a little harder and stay with it until we get the person through it. Now, that's very important. Do not do this business on a whiplash unless it's a simple whiplash, which I have done. But on a trauma such as this, as Ken has gone through, take him through a cranial first, or you'll be unsuccessful with the whiplash attempt. Okay, and we want to have success built in every step of the way so the person gets the progress. Any questions? Okay.
Two questions. Find the pain and push. In your experience, how far from the centre of the cervical do we push, and the direction of the push?
It depends on where you'll find the calcifications. And you'll have to kind of palpate in there with your finger until you find where the calcifications are. And when you find those, that's where the pain will be. And that will vary from one person to the next.
And the direction, once we find that?
And the direction, you have to work with that direction until you get stars or burning. Once you get the burning, just stay right with it. You've got the right spot.
Thank you.
Do we look the same? My question's along the same lines. If I push around in the base of my spine, anywhere around the occiput or whatever, on anybody, I'm going to get some form of pain. How do we know that we're not just affecting a nerve response as opposed to working on a calcification?
You will have no pain because everyone will have certain degree of inherited genetically caused trauma that is in this body. And so you're not only dealing with the pain from your ancestors, you're dealing with your own pain. But when you press on it, and there's no numbness there, but you have full feeling there, but after a while, like with Ken, I was putting full pressure on there, and there was no pain there. Right, Ken? There's a little possibility of where I put the pressure on very heavily, there'll be a little bit of trauma-type pain, like a bruise-type pain, which will be there for maybe 2 or 3 days. We put up with that.
Okay, what I'm not totally clear on is if I pinch my skin here, I get a pain response in my body, and I guess that sits with me that's normal. If I push in different places around the body, I'll get pain. And what I do depends on that happening. So what I can't really grasp is that everywhere I can get pain, if we work out the calcifications on that spot, then there should be no pain in the body. That's where the grey area is for me.
And come here now. Let's say we have a lot of pain around the pectoralis muscles, okay, from heart stress. We may still have calcifications back here on the first, second, third, and fourth thoracic vertebrae, all of which go to the heart area. And if these have not been worked out properly, there'll be a lack of nerve supply and circulation into the pectoralis, into the heart, into the reflex areas to the heart that we haven't dealt with, and the calcifications will once again return. Therefore, we have to dissolve these calcifications in the upper thoracic spine to help to get the full nerve supply and circulation into the heart. And then sometimes all of the painful spots along the pectoralis area, which is a reflex to the heart and lung area, then those just go. Okay? Okay, next question.
Okay, you're answering pieces to the question, or maybe I'm not making myself clear on that. Well, if we have a numb body that's heavily calcified, you can sometimes push on it and there's no pain at all, right?
Right.
Okay. And then we go through stages of feeling and working up through the scales of whatever, but bring us into a more feeling-based body, let's say. And then if we've totally healed the body and we've worked all the calcifications out of the body and all the trauma, we should once again come back to not feeling any pain if anyone pushes on us. Is that correct?
We will feel pain, but it won't be hurting us. We'll feel the sensation, but it's not going to be a hurting type pain.
Okay, how do you clarify a hurting type pain and a not hurting type pain?
It doesn't bother you that it hurts.
Okay, that's cool.
Okay?
Yes, John, what's the situation with the stars? What actually causes them, and what is actually manifesting when you see stars? Around your body? I've seen about half a dozen.
All right. Interesting.
Can you move over this way because it's right in front of the speaker? We're getting.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just tell me where to go. I'll never get lost. Now, if you see stars, which I have seen stars, I have seen planets, I have seen these big pitted things look like another type of moons, when I've been injured, and I've often wondered what those are. I'd like to have Doug tell us what those are.
Phenomena.
He knows.
Question number 3.
Neil, would you ask the question again, please? We're going to ask Neil's question first. No, Neil's question first we're going to handle, Sama, then we'll take care of yours. Okay, you hang on.
Well, just to lead in, once I was doing a yoga pose and I was stretching my back pretty severely. I probably didn't have much sensation then. I realised what I was doing, but around this area here, all of a sudden there was an almighty crack and crunch, and I could see, I don't know, I lost count, all these stars just a few feet in front of me, and they're all blinking on and off, and I'm there, wow. This lasted 10 seconds or more, and it was very dramatic. I was wondering what they were.
I'll talk to it. Okay, here's what happens. There have been times when we have lived in other times and other places. And we have experienced explosions, destructions of our body, wherein our body has been literally thrown into outer space. And during that time, and during that time that we have been blown, shall we say, into outer space, we see planets, we see moons, we see all the pitted areas where the asteroids have hit different planets and moons and so on. And we see stars and suns. Did you see any planets when you had this experience? Okay, now here's where you are now triggering into past trauma that has been locked genetically or on the natural man level into that particular area, which is manifested in that spinal area that went crack. You following me? So that particular area then, that trauma there, when that pain was released, it released memories of past pain of like energy patterns, which would be associated with memories of stars and planets when you got blown clear out into the space. Now, one of the things that I learned was I had okay, this has got to go on camera. All right, I had a friend of mine who I spent many, many months with training me. And it went on about 12 to 14 hours a day for about a year, to be honest with you. Many months. Most of that year I spent in trying to overcome my own unconsciousness. But during the times that I had these unconscious states, he began to teach me many, many things. At this time, he would come from his home in Tucson, Arizona, up to my home in Portland, Oregon, rap on the ceiling 3 times, let us know that he was there, and then he'd call up by the phone and tell us everything that we had been doing to show that he had the capacity of traveling astrally, as we call it, and being anywhere he wanted to at any time, astrally. One time he traveled astrally, and my wife was pregnant with my second boy. And he projected himself into the bedroom where I was, inside of the protective influence that every unborn child has, which is a total taboo for any disembodied spirit. And the energy pattern cannot identify the difference between a person projecting themselves or a person who's capable of, shall we say, who's a disembodied spirit who enters into the place. And at that time, he projected himself inside of this protected space around my wife's body, protecting the unborn child. Now, this is a little interesting, because at that moment, there was a terrific blue flash in the air. And this blue flash zigzagged through the air, went clear out into the other room, where I had a large mineral collection and a lot of books on the wall over here. We had the second floor of our open-story home. It was going up 30 feet to a laminated 2x4 ceiling. And all these rocks, crystals, and my collection were blown all over the house and just left great big dents in the walls and the floor wherever they landed. All the books were strewn out all over the place, and he just went boom and was gone. Now, I wondered what happened. I called Bob up at home, and Bob was unconscious. He was unconscious for 3 days, during which time Bob was clear out in space. And he described to me the planets and the stars that he saw and the hell of the time he had getting himself back to planet Earth again, because he was in a coma those 3 days. Now, Bob had a little problem with emotions. He was, oftentimes he'd get furiously angry at things that didn't go the way he thought they ought to go. And he became absolutely blistering angry that he made a mistake. He blew out and burned out his gallbladder and liver area, and he died shortly after he was able to get back to his body. He had destroyed his body with his anger. And there I had another teacher that passed on, and I was very grateful on one hand for the experience, because he explained to me what had happened, that he had projected himself astrally into the protective influence unbeknownst to him, and they just zapped him out of there because he was in an unwelcome place, uninvited. You hear me? Okay, and all these memories of all these things, all the stars and planets and everything, and he had a hard time getting back to planet Earth. He still had a body to get back to. But if you're in a war, in a space war, and you're out there in spaceships, which many of us have been, we've been space cadets, the Jedi, and we're out there battling in the wars for good and evil and all this sort of a thing, and there have been spaceships before, and there are spaceships now, okay? When those things blow up, everyone is just pulverized. There's nothing left of them. Vaporized, can I use that word? And the spirit's sitting there wandering around in space for a little while, trying to figure out how are they going to get back to a place where they can get another body. They lost that round. Checkmate, they're done. New game, but where are they going to play? And that's when we have the search and rescue team go out and gather these people up and lead them back to where they have to go. All of us have been in this type of an experience. And so when we get knocked out through tremendous trauma to our body, then we re-experience that which has happened before, and that stars and the planets, the stuff we see, are simply memories of a past traumatic event that we haven't dealt with yet. Okay, Neil? Does that help you, sir? Okay.
Now, instead of one, I have two questions. My first question was from the observation. when you were doing the point holding in the cervical, it occurred to me that actually if we are willing to put as much pressure as the patient is willing to take, about 70-80% of the time we've been spending on point holding is just too long. Because it took you about 20 minutes to achieve that. That was my first question.
Okay,
but anyway,
stop there.
I'm aware that we have to give just enough for the patient to...
Stop there. Doug, would you answer that question, please?
Well, I think you got a couple of factors here, but I think that you're quite right overall. Point holding, on the one hand, there is a lot of time spent in point holding where the person's really nowhere near the edge of what they can handle. And I think in a lot of cases, if the point holders were really pressing as hard as they could or as hard as the person can handle, I think in a lot of cases you probably would have things happen a bit quicker. Yet on the other hand, there's also just a situation where somebody's ripe. I mean, somebody's ready, and Ken was obviously ready, and so something was able to happen in a very, very short period of time there. If John had just sort of picked somebody at random from the room, where that person probably wouldn't have been ready for anything to happen, it probably wouldn't have made much difference how hard John pressed. There probably wouldn't have been any results because you just didn't have a person that was ripe. So there's several things to look at there.
Yeah, my second question is about this protective space that was protecting the baby. Now, can I assume that where God is protecting somebody, like a baby, an innocent case in that situation, no other energy which is unwelcome will be able to break through that protection, like a protective shield which is from God?
Unless the mother violates laws which allows her initial position to be unprotected. Now, let's say the mother goes on marijuana or something like that. Then, of course, the baby is going to be affected by that, and then the protective influence around that baby will be gone. So if the mother does something of a disastrous nature, then she's going to be hurt by that, and so will the baby. And the baby will no longer have that protection through the mother's violation of law. Doug.
Okay, question 3. No, on what?
Let's go back and finish another question. Have a seat, please. Whoops, excuse me. I got to do this right. I'll never forget that, Ian. That's beautiful. At least he could have worn clothes that fit. This next little bit here is extremely important. I don't know how to say it gently, but I'll say this.
That never stopped you before?
There are many, many people today that are being trained in occult arts, which are teaching them how to travel astrally. I myself have learned how to do this, and I can travel anywhere I want to go, anywhere I want to be, totally out of my body with perception. Now, this is the way it is. Now, some of you can do that likewise. This is the way it is. I don't do this because of what I have just described to you. Because if we go into a place uninvited, we can be destroyed not only physically, where our physical body dies, but we can be destroyed spiritually. For an example, if we astrally project into certain areas where the space aliens have developed their bases here on planet Earth at this point of time, and we project inside of their protected fortresses where they have sensing devices of the following nature. They can take your energy and detect that energy. Okay? And let's say that they have a detector that they can train in on where a disembodied spirit, namely us, where we project ourselves into their bastion of protection. And you'll have one can train in on you, get your frequency, get a resonant frequency, and they pick that up. And then you have another one over here that can train in on that same frequency and locate you right in time and space. And they can pick out your energy pattern, which will have an energy by resonant frequency, and then they're trained in on that. And then you have a third one coming in from another direction, just like a hologram. What happens when all three put out that energy of your body in time and space?
Poof.
Poof. That's exactly what happens to you.
It's the same principle of that auto transmuter that I was telling you about Saturday night.
That's right. But that's not for sale yet. It's still in the laboratory trying to get perfected. But seriously, folks, do you hear what I'm saying? Now, I myself did this the other day, about a year ago, wasn't it, Anita? About a year ago, and a fellow wanted to have a little fun, so we traveled astrally into this space station of the graves. And we went down to come into it. We projected ourselves down at the bottom level and thought, well, they're not going to have anybody come down there, so they're not going to have any detections down there. Well, we came up to the 6th level, and they did. And I didn't know that. And suddenly, while I was there, I had my 360-degree vision. I was very intent on looking upon all of the goings-on down there at level 6 in this one space station on Earth today, Pine Gap. Okay? And while I was there looking at all what the Greys were doing and how they ate and how they used the feeding dishes and so on, which I won't go into at this point of time. And I was just fascinated with how they did things and how they were growing mile after mile after mile after mile of people in these so-called test tubes. Pardon me? No garlic, no onions, sir. I'm being very serious now, Tariq. This is important stuff. And then suddenly they had their energy pattern trained on me. I thought, uh-oh. Then I saw another one over here being trained on me. Uh-oh. And the third one was just getting into position. And I got the hell out of there. And then we increased my frequency change so they couldn't get a hold of me. And because they can get a hold of you through a distance. And what you do is you change your energy pattern by increasing, speeding up. And then you put yourselves beyond their detection. And also, if they can detect you, they can destroy you. Now, this is the type of energy systems they have today. Now, so don't go fooling around with these techniques. Back in the pyramid times, for those of you who have memory of it, you will remember that they taught people how to be out of body in their various techniques and procedures. And to do so, you had to be out of body to survive by leaving your body in a state of suspended animation inside of the sarcophagus, which was part of your training, and you had to do so for a lengthy period of time, and then come back and revive your body again. If you couldn't do it, you died. And quite a few people failed in their tests. Now, there's other types of occult situations where people are trained to be out of body. And this is a false notion which is dealt with by the astral realm and their teachings. is that it's important for people to be free of their physical body, because in their way of thinking, the physical body is a prison. This is true. The physical body is a prison. And so their desire is to free the soul so the body no longer has any hold on them, and they are then free to go and do and be wherever they want to go, do, be. Okay? Now, many of your different organizations today that are talking about freeing the soul from the body are involved in just these technologies, which are capable of freeing the soul from the body. I'm grateful about one thing I found, is that we can develop our capacity to know exactly what we want to know, any place on earth, what we need to know, without having to be there in an astrally projected form. And that was new to me. And I thought, I can't accept that. How can you know something going on over there when you're over here? But when you're outside of time and space, then you have the capacity of knowing everything that's going on everywhere, every when. Now, our job then is not to leave the body, as the Scientologist would teach you, to gain such control over yourself that you can leave the body at will. We're not interested in that type of procedure. We're here to take this physical body and increase the vibration rate of this physical body so that we become one with it, that we might be able to move into a more powerful position, which will take us through what we call the ascensional process. And this is where it's stated that in the book of Revelation that we'll be changed in a twinkling of an eye as we move from imperfection to perfection. And we'll be changed in a twinkling of an eye where we go from imperfection of our physical body to a perfect state. Does that mean that we're not going to still have the same features that we have here? No, but the features will be more refined. The hair will gradually come back to its natural color. The skin will be free of its wrinkles and come back to its natural function. And the body will begin to go through the step-by-step procedures that will take us into the ascensional process. And this is when we are one with the physical body, having the full abilities of the realm of the masters, rather than being relegated to the false teachings of the shamans and other groups of people who are mistaken in their approach to teach the person to be free of their physical body. We will never be free of the physical body. This is our teacher, the physical body. This is the doorway to spirituality. And we need our physical bodies as a tool to teach us the reception of sensory activity in its fullness and the ability of projecting our thinking in its fullness in the same manner. The body becomes the perfect outer manifestation of both yin and yang. So what I'm saying to you is that the different shamans and their ability to project themselves astrally, can they do this? There's no question. They certainly can. But the danger is that they're separating themselves from their body in their attempts to be free of the body, when the only way we will ever be free is from expanding the parameters of restriction upon us that we have agreed to entertain, that we have agreed to take on. And by expanding these parameters or laws and principles and expanding them, we expand them to include the physical body, not to reject the physical body. Because our physical body will be the only way that we'll ever attain to a state of resurrection or ascension, while if we fight and try to be free of the physical body, we will be chained to the process of birth and rebirth over and over and over and over and over again until we learn to attune ourselves into the perfection and the teachings of the masters. Are there any questions on this? Okay, bring them up now. Bring your bodies with you. Matthew.
Could you comment on the Eckankar process where they use astral projection to go to the higher astral planes purely for the purpose of spiritual education, not to fun around or whatever?
There is absolutely no question about people who go to the spiritual planes. There's no question about this whatsoever. And the spiritual planes in the astral realm are quite real. A master needs to learn to understand this, Matthew, and be able to do that. But in proper order. A master that has not mastered his own body cannot do that without disregarding his body and projecting himself out and going to the astral planes, where he's taught by people which will be of a limiting nature at best.
John? It would seem to me that part of the principle here is this. If you try to have an out-of-body experience before you've really mastered simply being in the body and being aware of what's going on in your body, then what you're doing is something that's potentially for you going to be very involutionary and very downward spiral. On the other hand, if you can first master the physical body to some degree, including being able to go through the pain and on up into the mental body, then it's quite possible to have those same levels of perception that you could have initially had with an out-of-body experience. It becomes quite possible to get that same level of experience and yet still be within the body simultaneously, in which case what you're doing is then something that could be very evolutionary or very uplifting. So it's trying to do something before its proper time, place, and purpose that I think is the problem, not so much the experience itself.
I think the second, I think it's in the magic presence of the Ascended Masters. It was stated that in the Cave of Symbols, there was a machine that was built where Gaylord's vibrations, physical vibrations, were increased.
Atomic accelerators,
That's
what they
right.
use.
Yeah. And on Saturday, when Doug was talking about his list of things, he mentioned something like that. I kind of have a feeling that there's something like that actually going on now. Could you comment on that?
You're asking if it goes on now?
Whether it's being built or it has been built.
It has been built and it's utilized for those people that have reached that certain state of development. This is a fact.
Wow, that's great.
Okay? That's here today. For those people who have reached in their spiritual development in this body, as far as they can go, then that body is lifted up vibratory-wise, that a person is able to go into a higher state of spiritual development without the hindrance of the physical body, but still with the physical body. It's, in other words, a lot of the genetic things that we are bogged down with are not our karmic considerations to deal with. And so many of the things that we don't really have to deal with because they aren't ours to deal with go back maybe 20, 30 generations, 40 generations or further. And these are the things that are cleaned out of our systems, and our bodies are literally purified, that the soul then is no longer hung up by these imperfections, and the person is able to progress then with a more perfect body.
Why would the Greys want to destroy us? I mean, you know, even traveling in an astral way. I mean, why is that?
Why are they what?
Why would they want to destroy us? I mean, like...
The Greys don't see things the way we see it. They're looking for a planet in which to survive because their planet would no longer sustain life. They made agreements with the Trilateral Commission, which is on planet Earth. How many of you have heard of the Trilateral Commission? They made agreements with the Trilateral Commission that in return for scientific knowledge, which is very, very advanced, that the U.S. government would, or the Trilateral Commission, which exists outside of the U.S. government, would give them a place, like in the United States, they've got one location. Here in Australia, they have another location. In return for their protection as a race, which is the benevolent thing to do, then they would give advanced scientific knowledge, which would give the certain groups of people the edge, shall we say, over other groups of people. Doug, anything you want to say on that? That's as simple as a nutshell.
Well, there's a lot of other things, because there's been a lot of treaties that have been entered into with the different secret governments, and one of the aspects of these treaties is that the Greys and others are basically given permission to abduct a certain number of humans per year, and they probably exceed that number, but that's not really the point. I mean, this is something that the governments have freely agreed to. So when you start, looking at, like, I think in Australia about 10,000 people a year missing, there's a lot of other things that are going on here as well.
Now, these abductions are used by the Greys, where these people, for example, will have certain endocrine glands of their body cut out and certain parts of their body cut out, which will give life to the Greys, where the only way they can eat is by absorbing it in through their skin. And so they have these huge vats with blood of their victims and with their, shall we say, the gleanings from the endocrine glands and so on. And these things are put in huge vats which these Greys bathe in order to get nourishment that they absorb through the skin of their body, that they can survive. With them, it is a life and death situation. As Doug has pointed out, they have broken every treaty with the trilateralists with whom they made their arrangements. And they have defended themselves to such a degree that they are impervious to outer attack at the present time from any foreign invasion. They have placed themselves virtually in a situation that they cannot be destroyed. Now, you go to Pine Gap. There is a city under Pine Gap, which is about 20 minutes out of Alice Springs, south of Alice Springs, where 3.5 million people can live. Under that city is another city where 3.5 more million people can live. Now, this is the type of the situation that we are definitely confronted with, and the top secret U.S. People are there to protect the Greys in order to honor the treaties that they have made with him, in order to continue to secure advanced scientific material, much of which was used during the war with Iraq, if you remember. They experimented with things that were so far advanced that no country at that time could ever defend themselves against the aggression of the United States using these advanced technologies. I think, Rex, you're next, sir.
This is really interesting for me, because when you're sharing sort of information, to find and get more information like this, you need to know where to look. And there's a book that's called Matrix 3. Matrix 3, and you get it from Altered States, and occasionally it comes out. I don't know what's happened to the guy that produced the book, but there's all that information's available, and it's in this book, and you should really study it because it's very, very important to understand these things, because as you start to work on these planes of, as we're getting into now, you're starting to disrupt things, and so you have to realise just exactly what you're doing and take responsibility for it, because it's really, really important you know what's happening.
There's Matrix 1, if you can get your hands on that one. There's Matrix 2, There's matrix 3, which is the one that Rex is aware of here, and there's also a matrix 4 that's out. Okay. And this is chock full of information that you need to be aware of concerning the Greys and their full implications as to what they have been doing with their knowledge. These books are black market things that they've really been banned.
Yeah.
And you have to do what you can to get a copy of these, and they are available. Yes, Lewis. It's a name I can't pronounce.
No, that's right. It's really hard to pronounce.
And it's not really his name.
No.
Pardon me?
Yeah. It's where we put we had the address up on the board where the Herb Vale 8 was. You can get it from him. And
Okay.
he's got all sorts of information there. So if you want to do some exploratory work, then...
Yeah, but get it while you can. Get it while you can. If there's one book, if you're interested in this, get this book while you can and study it from beginning to end. You'll find the material quite valid and uplifting to your knowledge. And quite bothering, because then you begin to wonder, well, what are you going to do with the thing? You'll probably continue doing the same thing you're doing now.
Now, John, if these Greys have got a far advanced technology, as you say, why do they want treaties with us? Why don't they simply just take over?
They need a good food supply.
I've never really clarified in my mind what the difference is between the time-space continuum warp and astro traveling. Somehow I thought they were connected, and once you got through the time-space continuum warp, that was when you could do astro traveling. Could you please define that?
You're mixing apples and oranges together. I'll ask Doug to prepare a discussion on that for tomorrow. Okay, Doug? Okay.
My question, John, is this. Are we really just helpless? Is there nothing that can be done about that, like an Achilles heel, about the Greys and so on?
I'm not aware of it. Now, the thing is, they're emotional. They're not the same type of people like we are. They don't have the understanding that we have about love and about charity and about benevolence and so on. They're looking upon us as a continual food supply without any concern for our well-being whatsoever.
But on our own, is there nothing we can do to protect ourselves as well?
I don't understand what to do at this point of time. Love is not enough. When you are a food supply and you're being hunted down, and many people are, and they are abducted, okay? And we have situations where some of our people in body electronics have gone through a series of abductions, and each time that they were abducted, they came back pregnant. And each time they came back pregnant, the baby would live for about 4 to 5 months in the womb of the lady. They'd come back and take the baby from the woman again. And the 5th time, she said, I want to keep my baby. I don't want to give my baby up. At that time, they did away with her and she died. This is how important these things are. Because, and this is only just a couple of years ago. Now, this sort of thing is happening to many, many people. And this abduction thing is becoming increased, where they figure maybe 1 out of 30 people have been abducted. This is the statistics that they're coming up with now. And there's about probably 8 or 9 people in this room that have already gone through the abduction procedure, and they know who they are. Now we're getting into situations here where I don't quite know what the end result is going to be, but I do know this: that they have no right to interfere on this planet without the permission of the people here. And they have already violated that right with their abductions. But the abductions were given by treaty from the Trilateral Commission, where they were given us the right to go out here and gather certain people from certain elements of society that they could go ahead and perform their experiments on to facilitate their own survival. Okay?
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Just be aware of it for now.
I realize that the movies, and it seems that some of these people who are doing the science fiction themes are kind of actually getting a message out to the people?
Yes, they are. But the message is to love them and to tolerate them and this sort of a thing, which may be, on one hand, something that's necessary to do. But oftentimes, if your whole race is going to be subjected to a type of slavery which would then keep the genetic code from being developed to its highest degree for the development and progression of man, then I'd have to say we've got a rotten apple in a box and we're going to have to take that rotten apple out. Now, how that's going to be is a process yet to be determined by people who have the knowledge, that will be given the knowledge to do just this. And I believe it'll happen.
A thing to realize here is that beings such as this that are living against or contrary to correct principles, where they're enslaving people and killing people and all the rest, they can only advance so far. I mean, even technologically, there's limits on what they'll ever be permitted to advance to. So the thing about it is we may be technologically and otherwise, we may currently be in a very vulnerable position with respect to, say, the Greys, where on the face of it physically it would seem like we're totally helpless. But the thing to realize is that there are a higher level of beings like the Masters who will be far more powerful than what the Greys could ever aspire to, because as long as the Greys continue to violate universal law, there's very, very severe limits there as to what level of progress they could ever possibly obtain to without having to go back and deal with all their transgressions first.
I can feel a lot of apprehension and a lot of fear and things. And the thing that I learned very early in the piece was you have to educate yourself and understand. And as you get that understanding there, you realise that the silly mistakes and things that people do are, by just taking things at face value and thinking, well, I know better, it's ridiculous. You've really got to educate yourself, and then with that knowledge, you lose the fear and the apprehension. So that's what I'd advise people to do, is to go out there and very carefully look and to stay invisible. Like, I can't help but admire people like John and Doug who stand up and publicly and say these things and put it on record, because you have to have the ability to deal with what you attract to you. So when you're setting yourself up as teachers and people ask you these questions and you give a little bit of information, you really have to know how to deal with the repercussions of that information. So to my way of thinking, you must educate, read and find as much as you can out about it, because that's the only way you're going to survive it, because otherwise you just get buried in the rubbish that comes from what you attract, from what you say. Is that right?
I want to go back and finish one statement. Take careful notes on this so you have it, because this is the dilemma that you're going to have with this astral projection business, Matthew, okay? The principle is if we train ourselves to see ourselves exterior from the body and travel astrally, which is possible, and you're observing then from outside of the body, which all of us have done from time to time and may not have recognized it. Okay, that will be one aspect which is the counterfeit for truth. Where the truth is that we are capable and need to develop this capacity. We need to be inside the body where we know all from within. Now that's the duality. In other words, from being where you are, Matthew, from being inside the body, you will be capable of knowing all from within. You don't have to go outside the body to search for it. Like Krishnamurti says, quit reading books as he's writing books. Quit seeking for teachers as he's being a teacher. Okay? and learn from within. And I will tell you that you can know more in a few moments of meditation as taught by the heavens from within than you can study the rest of your life in all the books in the world. Now I know that from experience. That's quite a heavy statement, but that's the way it is. And some people get upset with me when I say that's the way it is. Now, if you want to read some material that might be of interest to you, get the book of Jasher and read the story of Joseph, who was sold into Egypt, and read how he was taught virtually overnight that he could qualify for his position of leadership over Egypt, how he could qualify for that by learning 50 languages fluently, by just being taught overnight. Now, how long would it take us to learn 50 languages fluently? Take a little while with all their dialects? It'd be a long time, wouldn't it? Now, therefore, to repeat this once again, there's one school which teaches people to be outside the body and to leave their body in a trance, leave the body in a suspended animation, and leave the body and go exterior and travel astrally and be taught from the astral realm. That can be done. That's where you're observing from without. Now that will be the counterfeit for truth, when the truth of the matter is that we can be taught fully conscious without ever going into a trance state, where from inside the body we can know all from within. And that's just where we enter into the inner essence, and we then have the full comprehension of the elements of the creative force. Doug, anything you want to add to that?
No, that's it.
Okay, now Janine, I have you down here, and I would like to have you deliver an impromptu speech. You save your question. I want to have Janine deliver a discourse here at this point of time on Dr. Usui, and I'd like you to explain how it took him 7 years to understand the importance of spiritual training versus physical training. Now you listen to this young lady. She knows what she's talking about in this area.
Okay, so when Mikao Usui came back from the mountain, where he was in meditation for 21 days, where he got the initiation, where he felt and know how to channel the energy to heal the people. He was so excited about it that he went back, and he thought the best place to go back was to Kyoto in Japan, where he came from, and went to the it was not the ashram, went back to the city where all the beggars is the right word, yes, where all the beggars were living. And he thought, if I can heal them, if I can give them a proper job again, then they're gonna take their life and they're gonna grow and expand. So he went back there, and for 7 years, free of any charge, just out of his heart, he just treated people. He didn't ask anything back. There was no return of energy, of money-wise, of vegetables or whatever. Even when he arrived there, they took everything away from him. He had nice clothes, he had money, so they took it away, and it was okay for him. So he kept healing the physical body. After 7 years, so people walked away, they had a job, but some people came back in the same state than before. They were ill again, they were sick again. And he cried because he was giving and he was healing people. And he was thinking that he was helping them. But the thing that he forgot was when people don't want to be helped, and when people don't feel the gratitude, they're going to be sick again. So he stopped at that moment to heal, and he waited for the people to come to him and asked to be healed. And in that point, the principles of the Reiki around gratitude, the principles started there, because in the beginning it was the energy. It was the energy flow, it was the helping the people from his heart, but there were no principles. And at that point, when people took on the principles, the spiritual healing started. They know that they needed to change. Over?
Go over that last bit one more time.
Okay. So, when you can have energy, Mikhail Rossi was giving the energy, the universal life force, he was giving his love, he was giving everything of himself. But the people they didn't realize what they get. They were not thankful. So he saw that. And when he realized that, then he waited until people were asking him and were really grateful and thankful for his gift that he had to give. And I can see, and he could see, that when there is no thankfulness, there is no spiritual growth. The focus is just on the physical body. With being thankful, with being grateful, with accepting the energy, is also the acceptance of responsibility. How more energy you receive, how more grateful you are, how more you open up to greater gifts, to greater healing.
Okay. I hope you all understood that. Doug, I want you to talk about gratitude now for a while. Anita, you have something.
Well, that's what I was going to talk about.
Anita, you go ahead and discuss the matter.
Yes, the key word, I just read this yesterday, the story, and I was just amazed because the beggars that he healed their bodies, and then they went out to the street, they went to the temple to learn all the spiritual truths and to work, and then he found them back begging a year and a half later, or a year later, or half a year later. And he just got so upset, he actually fell in this puddle of mud, and he just started crying like a baby because they weren't incorporating the spiritual principles into their life. They actually said to him, it's much easier to just go out and beg and get food than to work and get food. And this is where the gratitude, they had no gratitude for the healing which they had received. No gratitude whatsoever. They just took it as something that just came to them without expressing the gratitude to him or the gratitude to go out and serve others, to use this technique to help others to heal. None of them thought of this. They all just thought of their own convenience of having to have it easier to go out begging and get their food. And I think this is really, really important, where when we have this energy or this power to help someone else, we should have the gratitude inside to share this with others, to serve the rest of humanity.
One of the statements that John's made that's really stuck with me is that most people are in a hurry to get well so they can get back to doing whatever made them sick in the first place. And I think probably all of us are in that boat to some extent or another, where many, many people, they want to obtain a certain blessing or they want to obtain a certain reward or a certain change, but they don't necessarily want to do what it's actually going to take to bring that about and to sustain that. They don't necessarily want to do what it's going to take to really bring about a change, much less continue in that change. Now, the principle of gratitude here is a very, very powerful principle and very, very simple, as most good things are. John has made the statement, which I would agree with totally, that the greatest sin is the sin of ingratitude. The greatest sin is the sin of ingratitude. If we take Peter's statement of a few weeks back, where he's made the statement basically that everything that ever was couldn't have been otherwise. Is that about it, Peter? Everything that ever was couldn't have been otherwise? Okay, so if we expand that to say everything that ever was and everything that is now couldn't be otherwise, and if we recognize that everything is perfect divine order, that everything that's happening in our lives, everything that's happening in everybody else's lives, is a perfect manifestation of the inner consciousness of man. Peter?
I think you have to understand that that's the millisecond of the past too, which is very nearly the present.
So if we look at this principle that whatever is right now and whatever has been is perfect divine order, it's the perfect outer manifestation of our own consciousness, both individually and collectively, then ultimately, if we receive an experience of life with anything less than gratitude, what are we basically doing? We're denying the God within ourselves. We're denying the God within everyone else. And we're coming from a position that things are not perfect. We're coming from a position that things should be different than they are. And it gets into what John calls all the woulda, coulda, shouldas of life, where we want things to be other than they are. Reality, of course, is that things are exactly as they are, and they're exactly as they are for very, very good reason. They're exactly as they are right now because of everything that's been thought in the past, felt in the past, spoken in the past, done in the past. I mean, everything that's going on in the present moment truly couldn't be otherwise because it's the summation of all the creative acts of all intelligence everywhere. Or another way of saying it is it's the summation of the activity of the God presence within all intelligence everywhere. So if we look at things that way, things really are perfect, and for us to be anything less than grateful about that is a very, very great sin, because it's basically spitting in the face of God, if you really want to get blunt about it, when we're less than grateful for what is. Now, some things that apply here concerning gratitude. When we are, the statement is made, and I would refer you again to a wonderful book called The Celestial Song of Creation, which we wrote up in the board last week. The Celestial Song of Creation, which was by Annalise Scarin, S-K-A-R-I-N, Annalise Scarin. She was a Mormon housewife who made her ascension, and she wrote a number of books. Actually, most of them were written after her ascension. There's some interesting stories concerning her, which I maybe won't get into right now, but apparently most of her books the manuscript will just appear on the desk of her editor. You know, it'll just be there in the morning when he shows up at work in a building that's totally locked and secure and all the rest, and there'll just be a manuscript just sitting on his desk when he comes in the morning. And apparently on one occasion, this was many years after her ascension, she appeared to the editor, just came right in, introduced herself, said, "I'm Annalise Scarin, this is my next book, I want you to publish it." All her books, of course, are published royalty-free by this company. And she simply presented him with the manuscript, and the guy was pretty dumbfounded because he was under the impression that she died quite a few years earlier. And then she just walked right out of the office, and when he caught his composure a moment or two later, he ran out into the hallway where there were a bunch of people, and he said, "Where did that woman go? Where did that woman go that just came out of my office?" And everybody looked at him like, "What woman? There's nobody else here. There wasn't anybody else in the office." And so some interesting things have happened concerning her books. But basically, Annalise Scarin would teach that the law of gratitude is the principle of increase and multiplication. It's the principle of increase and multiplication, by which she means that when we are grateful for what we do have, whatever it is, however meager it may seem to us, when we're grateful for what we do have, this is what opens the door for us to receive more. If we can receive the blessings of life that we are receiving now, and if we're really in accordance with correct principle, we will ultimately realize that every single experience of life is a blessing. Every single experience without exception is a blessing. That's a hard one for most of us, but it's the truth all the same.
Most of us.
All of us. If we can recognize that every experience of life is a blessing, then what happens is this. When we receive whatever we have received with gratitude, this is what puts us into a position to receive more. So, for example, if a person can be grateful for what most would consider a minimal level of health, then their very gratitude for that minimal level of health is what puts them into a position to become healthier. I mean, it's the law of increase and multiplication. If you can be grateful for a small thing, then you're in a position to receive a greater blessing. Now, the flip side of this is that when we're incapable, or shall we say when we refuse to be grateful for shall we call it a small blessing, then basically what we can't be grateful for is taken away from us. What we're not able to be grateful for is taken away from us, and we're certainly not going to receive anything greater, because if we weren't capable of being grateful for this much, it's something like that, then it would be completely wasted on us to give us that much. I mean, if a person's not grateful for a little bit, then it would be a total violation of the economy of the heavens to bestow a greater blessing on that person, because what's going to happen? They won't be grateful for that either. Because when we come from a spirit of ingratitude, which all of us do to a great extent, we're continually putting out that energy pattern that things are not good enough. There's not enough of this, there's not enough of that, it's not happening fast enough, it's not perfect enough, it's not being done well enough, and on and on and on. If the word pattern fits, wear it. But the bottom line is, as long as we remain in that state of mind, it really doesn't make much difference whether we're living in a shack or a mansion. In our own mind, it still won't be good enough. In our own mind, it still won't be, we still won't be grateful for it. And so you'll see some people who can be very, very grateful for what would seem to be the meagerest blessings in life. And you'll see other people that are completely lacking in gratitude for what most people would consider to be a very, very abundant and rich life. They're healthy, they have all sorts of wonderful things around them, and yet they're not grateful for those things. John?
Can I just talk my own piece here for a moment? Okay, Ken, are you here, sir? I'm going to call you up here if you don't mind for a moment. Ken's here. And I'd like Ken, once again, to express to you, before and after, with the knowledge that there will be many people who are medically oriented that will not believe. There are many people who are into chiropractic that will not believe. There are many people who are here today that see it but don't believe it. You know what I mean? They see it, they don't understand it, and even though they see it happening before their eyes, they will not believe it, because you will, as instructors, you will find that the darkness of the human mind predominates. The darkness of the human mind predominates, and they can see something happening right at midday, but their mind is so darkened that they will not accept it because they cannot believe that it will happen. Now, Ken, you have a responsibility to be thorough now, okay, as an instructor. I want you to share in detail for the tape record your circumstances as to what happened to you before in detail. Don't leave anything out. And then what you have done for it up until this time. And then what happened today as another step toward the ultimate healing that we're still interested in coming to. But I want you to be thorough. Now, the reason for this is I want you to listen to the person and then look at your own disbelief. Because it is our own disbelief that we'll be combating, which will be the thing that will be the most difficult for us to contend with in ourselves, which then will draw to ourselves like a magnet in the instructions that we give other people, and we will not be able to instruct because we ourselves do not believe. I hope you understand this. Now, analyze very carefully where you're coming from. You may not understand in detail, but you'll understand that you have seen what has transpired, and then you can believe from that, and then knowledge will be added gradually over a period of time through the acquisition of your studies, and you will begin to believe. Because this is the sort of thing here that to me, some people in the world who are seeking now would frankly want to give the right arm just to experience what has happened to Ken, so that they would know for themselves that there's hope for the human race out there. Ken has just experienced one of the most traumatic events known to man. And I want you to go into it. Don't minimize it. Discuss it from the bottom floor up, that this might be made a matter of record.
In March of 1991, my state of mind back then was pretty well level 7. So I was down at the bottom. I was living and breathing pretty much just a doughhead kind of a life, living just day to day, having a great time. And for some reason, I had stepped off a spiritual path that I had stepped on a number of years previous. I guess I just needed a bit of a break. And this one day...
A breather?
Yeah, a break, exactly. This one day, like... It's nice that you get what you ask for. Yeah, there you go. I was out, and I was clear-headed, which was unusual. I was working at the time, and I was fortunate enough to work on skis. And I was going along, and I was following someone. And that's something that has, in retrospect now, I thought, well, every time I followed someone, it always seems to lead me to the wrong place at the wrong time. Or maybe it's the right place at the right time for the lesson that I need. Anyhow, I was following this person that had less experience than me, and he said, let's go this way, so I did. Now, he saw this rope there that I didn't see, and I hit this thing at about 60 kilometers an hour, and I was standing up much as I was now on skis, and this fella fell down in front of me because he saw it, and a bunch of snow flew up in my face, and I just kind of went around him a little bit, and the rope was perfectly positioned at this height that it hit me square in the mouth. And what happened is it went back, it went behind my wisdom teeth, and then as my head tipped back, it traveled superiorly, and then at the total back, as far back as my head could go, it then just passed through the whole maxilla and tore the whole piece out. So literally the top piece of the skull. Could you pass me the skull? And just hold it up nicely there. This whole piece right here was taken out from below my nose, and all my teeth. And I woke up on the ground, and there was a bunch of snow all piled up because I had slid a ways, and I saw my teeth there. And the first thing I said was shit, and I put it back in my mouth. And I thought that's probably a good place for safekeeping. And from then on, it was really challenge after challenge on trying to get people to understand what I was saying. The experience that I got, this ski patrol who picked me up off the hill saw that this had happened, and so he was aware of this. However, this doctor that had come into the patrol shack where I was being kept, where they called an ambulance, wouldn't believe me when I wrote it on a piece of paper that my upper jaw was broken. And the way she would test this is that she'd grab my lower jaw. Now you have to realize that this is floating. It's just resting in my mouth. She'd grab my lower jaw and depress it. Well, this is just riding on this, so she couldn't see that the two pieces were detached. And so she's in there jerking. She's saying, "Let me open your mouth." And it was just working fine, except the top teeth were there. And there was a lot of frustration, and I'm just kind of asking myself as I'm bobbing in and out of consciousness, like, what is going on here? Anyway, I got finally put back all together a number of hours later. There was a bunch of plates put in, and they wired my whole jaw shut and everything like this. And there was a point about a week after this happened that there was an artery that was broken that I had bled to the point of unconsciousness. Now, I don't know, I don't think I died, but at this period, you have to realize that, I felt sorry for myself that this happened at that time. And when I went out, I just I was panicking, and I asked for assistance. And at that time, though I would probably recognize the faces if I went through enough mugshots of some ascended masters, that someone had come along, and I had a conversation with them that they said that when you heal, you will heal. And so that means that this premonition when I was 14 that I could maybe be a doctor someday or something like this. So I got out of the hospital, and it was quite a bit of time trying to get back to normal life. I had lost quite a bit of weight, and I had really experienced a lot of pain. Now, when I was in the hospital, the way they had me propped up in bed because of this bleeding became a real big problem, is that I was just sort of hunched up with my head like this. Now, this put a lot of stress on the muscles, and I stayed like in that position for 2 weeks. It was, the only thing that I got out of bed for was to go to the bathroom, and that was only once a day, but there I was, and I felt that this might have been a bit to my detriment anyway. So I got out of the hospital, and I went to start to see physiotherapists and chiropractors, because that's what I knew was out there to help me, and nothing was happening. I couldn't get any movement in my spine back. My thoracic spine was literally locked. And up until last year, when Susanna Wilkerson, Paul's wife, I had met her because I was praying that I needed to learn something to bring this all together, all this knowledge that I had been studying, because I had started to go down a natural health path, getting into massage and shiatsu and some herbalism, which I found great results with, but things weren't moving like I needed them to. And Susanna, I met her in a park, and within 5 minutes, she's pinching me all over my body. She says, "You're numb here, you're numb here. You got to get these points right here to get some innervation going." And I'm just a little bit overwhelmed, but I felt that the energy was right. So I went with her, and she did some work on me, and she did some actual point holding, much like John did, except not nearly as intense. And it was pretty painful, and I had experienced some pretty painful treatments before, but you really got to love it, I guess. And so she'd got some things loosened up, and for the first time in 4.5 years, she rolled me over and she did this manipulation, and my whole back cracked from top to bottom, right up to the top of my neck. And I mean, the energy release with that was just fantastic. And so I started to take my petition that I put out to the cosmic about bringing this all together quite seriously when Susanna did this for me. And through a couple other experiences that I won't get into that happened to me last summer, where I had, I guess, more meetings with some higher, possibly higher entities and things like this, or ascended masters. I really started to take this seriously, and in November, just after the first body electronics seminar that Paul had taught in Calgary, I started to get scrutinized for talking about body electronics, because I became very public about it, because I could see the benefit behind this. And as well, at that time, I was thinking, this is extremely beautiful if we can get regeneration and iris change, because I was studying iridology before, and there was talk about some iris change and some of the things that I saw, but it was never really expanded on, other than that you really got to go to work on this stuff. And so without any expectation for anything, I was letting each day unfold because of an experience that I went through when I had my first points held in the seminar. My SDOs were held, and there was a whole bunch of crunching and cracking going on along the top of the suture and along the palatine suture. And there was a lot of numbness coming up in my face, and there were some feelings starting to come back, and I was really, really happy about this. So without any expectation, and with just the desire that things will work out the way they will with body electronics, Paul was able to manage to arrange for me to come here and cook, and he as well helped with my airfare to get over here, because I didn't have much of an income, and there was no way I could afford this. And as well, my family, saw the difference in me, and they said, well, you should go to this, and they helped me with some money as well to get here. And when I got here, it was, a flurry of activity, but I've held strong within my heart that there should be really no expectations. And then last week when I had my triple access held, and I got this muscle back, I thought, this is really great. And then when John called upon me this morning, and he started asking me if I was ready, I really made sure that I was ready, and I went inside myself, and I was saying to myself that there's no expectations here, that whatever is going to happen is going to happen. I trust John because of the knowledge that he teaches is just amazing. All the stories of people, regenerating is just fantastic. And I sat here, and all the time that John had his thumb in the back of my neck, I was saying to myself, I can live with this, I can live without it. I have no expectations today or tomorrow. I can live with it, I can live without it. And I just let the pain go, and let it go, and let it go. And it really hurt, but it felt pretty good, because it went right through it. Now, I never experienced the exact hitting of the rope, because I never did back then. I was completely unconscious for that. Until this day, I still haven't hit it. However, I don't know if it's necessary to anymore, because of the experiencing of the pain that has been locked in there and calcified. Now, if I do have to go through it again, no problem. I don't think that it's going to be just an incidental amount of pain for the amount of pain that I've had for the past few years. But the thing that I held in my mind this morning, and I still hold, is that there's no expectations. And still right now, my body's burning. I'm still getting some burning sensation in my palate, and I can feel that there's more sensation coming back. And there was a lot of pain in my teeth last week after my triple access, and that pain is starting to diminish, and it feels a little itchy. And if you know what that regeneration process is like, that is, I think, what is definitely happening. And my back is sure loosened up, and I tell you, I feel like a lightning rod right now, because my third eye feels like it's about out to here. It's like there's this like thumping on my forehead here, and it's really, really neat to still feel the sensations it's carrying on with what's happening. Did I miss anything, John?
I think that fills in a few holes that we had and helps you understand what this young gentleman has gone through. And the one thing here is this: no expectations and no conditions. And this is something that we still need to go through very, very carefully. Now, we have several people that I've just had them hold their questions for a few minutes, and I believe we'll take them one at a time.
Thanks. My question is, you were saying before, how about when people are ready, then it will happen for them. Partly relating to what Ken's gone through this morning, you said that you knew that he was ready, excuse me. But also when we did a lot of spinal work on ourselves, probably the majority of us have had no more than half a dozen or a dozen actual point holding sessions on the glands. How do you ascertain whether somebody is ready to move on?
With great difficulty. You just know. And when you know that a person is ready, then you go for it, and it happens. Now, if you're in doubt, my attitude is don't. So if I'm in doubt about it, I don't do it. Especially in front of a class like this. Okay? Now, if I know positively this man's ready for it and he's ready to go for it, and it's going to be a demonstrable act of healing which will be beneficial for instructors, then that will happen. But if a person is not ready and haven't yet reached that point of, shall I say, resignation, where you fully place yourself into a position of whatever, then if we're not in that position yet, then the chances are our resistance to the condition will hold the condition there no matter how much point holding we have. Because we want to get rid of the pain. And if we want to get rid of the pain, then the resistance to the pain or the condition will hold the condition there. This is wherein it's difficult to measure. Now, Ken has reached a point in his progression which is quite interesting, because it's just the word whatever. And he's not resistant to anything that is happening, as you will find out. If he has to spend hours working in the kitchen and missing class here, the attitude is, well, whatever, he'll pick it up, and there's no resistance to it. You follow me, what I'm saying here, Ken? It's much like Doug was before he went through the time-space continuum warp. He was into whatever because he still had responsibilities that nobody else could tend to in driving a cab, and so he was in class maybe half the time. And yet everyone was angry at him because he went through the time-space continuum warp because he wasn't there all the time. Now, he did go and get everything caught up on. All the notes and everything, he had all that, went through it carefully, asked questions, he was just there all the time. Now, like he was putting in twice as much time as other people were. But when it came pushes to shove, he was perfectly willing for anybody else to have that same attitude. And Ken, this has been your attitude. You want to see people blessed, period. No conditions, no expectations. And this is the type of an attitude that we have to have for our own healing, because if we're not willing to let other people have their healing, and we're resentful because it's not happening to us, and do I feel that resentment in here? You bet, I get the knives, because how come you didn't choose me? And I feel all these negative feelings here, and I sit and figure, well, the person hasn't learned yet. And yet they're upset because it didn't happen to them. And yet when we start looking very carefully, we haven't really defined our commitments and intent. And we have to, it's not just being healed physically, it's being healed, as talked about earlier, on the mental level, where we develop the spirit of gratitude for everything that happens. And when you're in the spirit of resentment, you're not in the spirit of gratitude. And this is one thing that some people will never learn this lifetime. It might be 10 lifetimes before they learn it. They'll eventually learn it.
Something happened to me when I was in India. There was John and I went to get some fruits, and there was this woman there that was begging, and she was really intent on begging, and you could just see her she just had to have something. I mean, she was just, pulling on us and gnawing at us, and she was begging, and so in my heart I was just blessing her with a lot of wealth. And what came to me after we went to the room, after we left the street and we went into our room, what came to me that we all she was like the symbol of all, we all have to some degree begging within all of us, a spiritual poverty where, okay, we're not manifesting like her, going out and going right up to somebody and saying, hey.
Go back over that again. That went right over the heads of 50% of the people. Talk about spiritual poverty and make it clear what you're talking about.
Okay. Well, she's actually going up to someone and grabbing them and saying, hey, I want that apple. I want, I'm poor, But aren't we also doing the same thing when we, for instance, we feel we can't get a job? Or when we feel we can't get a mate? Or when we feel
we can't be healthy.
We can't be healthy. We can't heal ourselves. Because in these ways we are also begging. We are saying that we don't have the gratitude for others to be healed or to have mates or to have jobs or whatever, or money. And we are also saying that we do not have the faith in the God presence to create that for us. You want to say more?
An area where I've seen that a lot with certain people in this class is a lot of people are taking the position in their own mind that this information is too complicated for them to understand. So there's a lot of people in the class that are focusing on what they can't understand rather than what they can understand. The reality is none of us are going to understand this information perfectly without years and years and years of study and application and prayer. But if you start off with the idea in your mind where what you're focusing on is what you're not getting, then you're starting off from a position of failure and defeat rather than assuming the virtue and just being very, very grateful for what you do understand and continuing then to understand the next level and the next level and the next level. And this is an attitude that's there in a number of people here in this room.
That's right. I'm not saying you just sit back and you just say, okay, universe, give me all these things. I mean, you have to put out the necessary preparation to obtain these things, but to add in the faith and the gratitude of others that are healed, of others that may have things that you do not have. This is what will bring to you what you are hoping for.
I feel a little outdated now. My question's a bit mistimed. I hope that's okay.
Kyle, go for it.
I'm an unbeliever, but I'm grateful. What I wanted to ask about, just because no one else has, and I have a strong resistance to asking, is you made the statement that you can travel astrally. And
I made that statement.
Yeah. To me, I was told to prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. So I don't have any experience in my own conscious memory of that, and I can't relate to it. But I've been, one of my teachers taught me to not believe a thing till I had an experience I couldn't deny, and then the balance of that was to be utterly diligent in chasing it. But what I wanted to ask was, just to clarify, because I'm a bit thick sometimes, that means that, for example, there's a kangaroo or something on the other side of that tree over there, which normally there isn't, but suppose one happens to be there, you can just sort of zip over there in your mind and have a look at it. Is that correct?
That's correct. A person can do that.
Can you do that?
Yes.
Okay.
I choose not to.
Okay. But you'd know it was there.
You can expand your awareness to where you would know that would be there, even though you cannot see it with your physical eyes.
Okay.
Now, when we're getting involved in daily tasks, we're putting our focus on daily tasks sometimes we're not in a meditative state, which would be characteristic of expanding the consciousness through meditative position to where it is what they call your meditation without seed. Okay, now when you expand that, then you'll have things coming into your mind where you have that awareness. But when you're doing your daily tasks in a kind of a regimented way, which we all do, then during that time we're not doing that sort of thing. We're looking at kangaroos behind tree trunks we can't see.
Yeah. I just need to sort of turn it into a concrete reality.
Okay, bottom line, you will not have that concrete reality until you have that experience. You cannot intellectualize something that can only be experiential. I think I talked about yesterday that you cannot intellectualize the Kundalini until you've had that Kundalini experience with the regeneration of nerve supply, muscle tissue, and so on, such as Ken has had, unless you have that experience yourself. And then once you've had that experience yourself, you know where you are. And then nobody can take that away from you. But an intellectual experience, you can doubt and doubt and doubt because you haven't been there yet. That's when you put it on the shelf, and then time comes when you have that experience, then say, now I understand.
How many years did you doubt Bob for?
Doubt what?
How many years did you doubt Bob for? Bob. Well, he told you he could astral travel. I'm sure you wouldn't have believed him until he demonstrated.
No, I didn't believe him because I couldn't.
Uh-huh. Did you ask him?
It was after he had passed on that I practiced certain techniques, and then I could.
Mm-hmm. So even when he'd knock on the roof and then tell you what he saw and all that, you still didn't believe him? Even when he'd go there to Portland from Tucson and knock on the ceiling and then call you up on the phone a bit later and tell you what you were doing, you still didn't believe it?
You have to understand, Doug, that I have been extremely skeptical about many things, and I still am. And I'm very slow to believe things that people present to me. And just because they say that things are true, sometimes I'm the last one to accept it. Oh, I know. That doesn't mean I make little of them and say I don't believe you, but I have to see for myself and understand for myself, and that's fair. But the thing is until I can experience it myself, I cannot accept it just on somebody else's say-so. Mm-hmm. And even then, I believe that is incorrect procedure.
Yeah.
Because there are some things that I had better believe because the person's integrity would indicate to me that in important matters they would never lie to me. And therefore, if they tell me the barn's burning down, I better believe them. Okay?
Okay.
And if they told me the barn was burning down, I'd probably question them, are you sure? And I'd probably question them even then. And then they say, yes, I'm sure.
Okay. Well, if anyone sees a newspaper article where this guy with two different colored skin gets arrested trying to leap a fence at Pine Gap, it was me.
Okay. Let me say this to you, sir. You won't be found if you do that in Pine Gap. But if you start looking for kangaroos, make sure you project yourself in the proper location, or else you might have long ears in the tail.
Yeah, Neville says make sure the kangaroo's not pregnant.
I have a few questions. I do realize that some people project unintentionally, like going out of their body. Is that the same as you call astral projection?
Yes.
Now, knowing all what you're saying, how do you prevent an unintentional projection?
With great difficulty.
Okay. And my second thing, you made mention of...
Some people do it automatically. They're just out of their body nearly all the time. And I've tested these people, and they're literally out of the body nearly all the time. And they're rarely in their body. They're watching their body walk along when they're walking along, or they have 360-degree vision, and they're about 4 or 5 feet up above their body as they're walking. Some people are out of their body all the time, and they don't think twice about it. It's the most natural thing in the world for them.
Could it be related to the state of unconsciousness or consciousness?
Fully conscious.
Okay. The other thing you mentioned was about the projections which used to take place in the pyramids.
Yes, sir.
I would like you to elaborate a bit more about that.
I will not.
Okay, thank you. Now, my next question is about the graves, or the graves, or whatever they are. From
the
where
what?
the graves? Oh, the graves. Okay.
The alien graves.
Yes.
Okay.
I was wondering where they came from, and if before they came, had they exhausted the food supply in that environment before coming to have this treaty with us on Earth?
You get a book called Matrix 1, 2, 3, and 4. It has all of that information in there.
Thank you.
John, would you talk about the place of kneeling in prayer?
Say that again.
Would you talk about the purpose of kneeling in prayer?
Why do you want to know?
Well, it's commonly considered to be used in some religions, like the Christian religion, and also I notice in one of your stories in Book 1 that you talk about kneeling when you are praying.
Why do you want to know?
I want to know whether it will be useful in my prayer.
It is a sacred symbol recognized by the masters. In Christianity, when you shed out all of the myth and all of the teachings of man and throw it to the four winds and come down to basic truth that is taught, okay, it is symbolic that every knee shall bow and every tongue confess that Jesus is the Christ. This is a future occurrence. Now that in no way detracts from the recognition of the validity that other ascended masters have attained to and what their responsibilities are. But the time will come when we truly acknowledge that Jesus is the Christ and has attained to the Christ consciousness, and we wish to follow in his footsteps, and we dedicate ourselves to do so the way that he has done it, by studying and manifesting even his very thought patterns in our minds, then we will have to acknowledge as we pray in the name of Jesus Christ, then our knees will bow and will be in what they call traditional prayer. Now that's in reference to the knees. Do you have any other questions? That'll suffice for now on knees. Okay. Yes, sir.
I'm just wondering if the knee bowing is coming at a later stage. Is it right for us to start kneeling now in prayers?
What was the question?
It's like the way I understood, John, is that when the time will come when everybody will recognize Jesus to be the Christ consciousness, then our knees shall bow. And I thought the question was also in relation to the position we take now in prayers. Should we start kneeling now and carry on hoping for that time?
If I told a Muslim to start kneeling in Christian prayer, I would, when he is already kneeling in his own way several times a day toward Mecca and in the name of Allah, I think I would offend him. If I told a Hindu to kneel in prayer when he was already kneeling in his own way as a Hindu to the various gods that he acknowledges as ascended, which is probably the case, then I would offend that person. I'm not going to tell anybody to kneel in prayer. But I am saying that when the Spirit of God moves upon us in a certain direction according to the pathway that we follow, whether it be Hindu or Buddha or Zoroaster or Jesus or Mohammed or anybody who is on the pathway somewhere somehow, then kneeling will probably be a part of our dedication to that particular being that we are acknowledging.
Just one other thing on that subject. There is, as Janine has addressed in reference to Reiki, there is certainly a lot of power inherent within certain forms and symbols and rituals and so forth. And the wise person will recognize the power that is inherent within certain activities, certain symbols, certain signs. Yet the wise person will also recognize that ultimately it still isn't the form or the ritual or the symbol that's of ultimate consequence. It's the consciousness of the individual as they undertake that form, or it's the consciousness of the individual as they fulfill that ritual, or it's the consciousness of the individual as they utilize that sign or symbol. So on the one hand, we can look at the power of kneeling or the power of pretty much anything else, and that's quite valid, but also it's very limited if we don't see beyond the form, because we have to understand it's the thought, feeling, and spoken word that are behind the form or ritual or sign or symbol that are the ultimate power, the ultimate creative force. That's the exercise of the intelligence that we have to look at.
Yes, I would like to further reinforce this. In Autobiography of a Yogi, it says that the higher the consciousness of the person, the more effect that person will have on world affairs. Whereas if a person is of a lower consciousness, he will not affect the planet as much as someone of a higher consciousness.
I have a question in relation to what happened with Wolf, in that he wanted his arm healed, not for himself, but for a higher purpose, let's say. And with Ken, he got out of his way, got out of his own way to enable the process. I had a lot of resistance as a child to the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, in that there was a strategy around this. It's like, if I be a good boy, this will happen. Now to me, as an adult, I experience what I acknowledge I receive in multiplication. So if I can acknowledge the love of another, the other only wants to bestow more love on me. But if it's a strategy, or there's no purity or authenticity in it, it's not attractive and probably not effective. So I'd just like to relate that as a child I saw a strategy in the teaching. If I become pure, I'll get this, which is obviously a tremendous contradiction, because there's a strategy behind it. So for me, it's the purity. It's almost like art for art's sake. It's the purity and the love of that purity somehow which will bestow all things upon us.
Who put the strategy there? Or the manipulation, if I can use that word. Was that the teachings of Jesus?
No, it was the teaching of institutionalized religion. It wasn't the teaching of a man of purity, of Jesus of Nazareth. And as a child, I felt I even knew that as a 7-year-old child. I felt that the church was giving me a strategy.
What's the bottom line point, Tom?
Just my question.
What was the question?
My question is that is to ask for confirmation of my understanding that it worked for Ken and it worked for Wolfgang because there was a purity about their willingness for others first. But if it's others first and then I shall have the kingdom of heaven, it's a strategy. And my question is, do you feel that that's true?
I'll say that the organized church, when they're talking about the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God, they don't have the foggiest idea on what they're talking about. I'm very sorry, but they don't. That's enough said.
Just looking at what you're saying there, Tom, about applying a certain principle with then sort of the idea that, well, if you do this, you'll get this. We all do that on some level or another. Just look at something as basic as you're having your points held and you're in pain. How many people here have tried to love the pain so that it would go away? I mean, it's the same thing. We're not just loving the pain for its own sake. We're loving the pain so that maybe it'll go away.
I just like to say there, if I try to lift up these glasses, if I try, I don't pick them up. If there's a purity, I pick them up, and I don't try. I suppose that's something that I'm just exploring.
Some time ago you told us Jesus in his young years did something wrong and took away people from the truth.
He didn't say in his young years.
In his early years or something like that.
He didn't say in that lifetime. He was not talking in that incarnation. He was talking on a much, much prior level.
Did I say that in this one?
You didn't say anything about younger years. You just said that soul Jesus had been the one that had led people away. Therefore, he was the one that had to bring them back by setting the example.
That is correct. Now, let's go back and hit that very carefully because I don't want to be misquoted on it. Jesus, by design, was the only person that could openly lead people back to truth by teaching the concept of love and bringing the initial concept of grace into, shall we say, the acceptable mode of conversation. It didn't happen just by chance that Jesus had the specific job of being the Christ as we know it. He had a karmic debt to pay which only Jesus could fulfill. And Jesus simply had done something earlier on, we'll leave it that, earlier on, in another lifetime, where he was responsible for, at one time, leading people away from truth. And therefore, karmically now, he had to lead people back to truth. And that's his job and his responsibility.
Thank you very much. And can you tell us what it was he did wrong in a former life?
In a prior lifetime, he led people away from truth. And now in this lifetime of Jesus's, he had the responsibility of returning people to truth by teaching correct principle. In a prior lifetime, he taught incorrect principle and led them away from truth. And therefore, it is not just by happenstance that Jesus had that responsibility to do what he did to correct that which at one time he had done the opposite. You go ahead, sir.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. One of them is on a meditation form, and I'd just like to get some clarity as to whether we're bordering on astral travelling or not. I was taught to bring the Earth's energy up to my base chakra, colour that in at a certain colour, move up through the different chakras until I got to the crown chakra, and then go into space or go into some other experience where I would just float around with no organized perception, let's say. How I was taught that you'd see yourself coming out of your body, see yourself coming out of your house, see yourself coming off the earth, going into space, and then just hang out for a little while and see what came up. My first question is this kind of an astral travelling, which I kind of feel it is. I don't know if it's the real thing, but is that a form of meditation that's going to be beneficial?
If it's you take a group of people, and let's say you have 100 individuals in the room, okay? And you follow that particular visualization technique, and you go over and pinch their big toe, 99 of them will yelp and one person is numb.
I have had the experience where one of the person in the room, we had trouble getting them back. I guess...
Right. There will be one person out of maybe 10,000 that they'll be up there somewhere floating around, sometimes the top of the room, and not know how to get back in their body. I found myself in that position myself once. It took me a half an hour to get back into the body, and the body was ice cold and numb, and took me a while to get the body working again. It scared me spitless because people told me how easy it was to get out of it, but they didn't tell me how to get back in. Or I didn't read that article. But I found it very easy to get out. But what happens when you want to get back in there and you leave your body in a state where there's nobody tending to it?
Okay, that answers that. Now,
you follow me?
I understand.
Very dangerous situation.
Okay, I understand that. Now, from my own experiences while I was doing this, I was still aware of the senses in the room, although I chose not to pick up on those, but I was also very aware of other things going on. Is this what you'd class as encompassment of everything in a meditation?
Maybe. It depends on where your focus of attention is, and you have to learn to encompass all things. I'm going to use the word impartially rather than selectively.
Okay, because that's what I'm trying to clarify, because some meditation techniques work on a mantra, or they work on focusing on a dot or drawing something into you, and this to me is going against what you're saying, because you're focusing on one thing to the exclusion of everything, right?
That's correct.
Okay,
and most people don't know how to handle that.
Okay, now what I'm trying to get...
Because that leads into a hypnotic type situation where a person then becomes identified with matter, because they become literally conditioned by the environment, because they have resisted looking at the things that they don't want to focus on.
Okay, because one of my students that came to me from another system had learned the dot theory of pulling a dot into the forehead here, and he said that when he really got into it, he experiences like scary monsters and all sorts of things flipping him out.
That puts him right into the astral realm.
Okay, that's fine.
Yep.
He's been trying to...
That's a dangerous way of looking at
it.
Okay,
okay, that's clear then. Okay, so let's get back to the encompassment point.
Do you understand what he's doing? He's focusing to the exclusion of. And that is a very dangerous thing, because in meditation, that you don't do until you have been able to encompass first. You have to learn to become yin before you can become yang.
Okay. Then,
and so you have to learn, first of all, to be aware of the things going on around you without druthers. Like, I'd rather have it this way than that way. Now, for example, if I'm meditating and I have a marsh fly biting me on the back of the leg, that gets my attention. And that screws up my meditation, because I'm not able, at this point of time, to be impartial. And so I take my time, I swat the marsh fly, and then I get back to business of meditating.
Okay, so let's say I'm in my space, okay? Sorry if this is boring anyone, but it's a bit of a bugbear with me and I need to get through it, okay?
So do I.
Okay, I'm in my space and I'm relaxed or whatever. I'm feeling the discomfort in my leg. I'm hearing the wind blowing outside. I'm aware of the door clattering. I'm aware of being off somewhere else, which I don't really understand.
And you're aware that your rear end is numb and both legs are numb.
That's true. So is that encompassment?
No, because you're still in an unconscious state. And you cannot encompass perceptually until you can release yourself from the emotions which will be in the state of numbness.
Okay, is this a path?
It's a pathway. It's a step on the... You have 7 steps of, shall we say, 7 floors of 7 steps each. And 7 steps in between each one of those. And the thing is you're at the bottom when you're numb.
There's a big difference between if you're aware of the door and the wind and your tailbone and your legs and all the rest. There's a big difference between being aware of those things where it's literally simultaneous awareness of all of them versus simply being able to look at one and then the other and then the other, even if you're doing it very, very rapidly, but you're still not aware of all of them at once. It's still linear. Even though you have an awareness of all these things, it wouldn't be simultaneous because you have to get up high, you got to go through the pain and get up to the mental body level before you're going to have that the hologramic type awareness.
But it's the beginning.
It's the beginning, yeah.
Okay, then perhaps my question should be then, would you be able to give us or me or I'm sure other people out there a basic starting point or a series of exercises, a series of mental thought or whatever that would allow us to move into the realm of encompassment?
Yes. As soon as you can learn to have full memory, perceptual memory of your mother and your father and your birth process, you'll be on the way at that point of time. And this means you learn to honor your mother, regardless of how mean she may have been to you, or how nice, it doesn't matter. And you learn to honor your father and love him just the way he is with all the black spots in his eye. You follow me? And you learn to love them unconditionally. Unconditionally.
Slow down, you're winding me up.
Unconditionally. And you treat them like they are the father of the God that is you. And you treat her like she's the mother of the God which is you. And you treat them with the dignity and respect that they are entitled to, regardless of how he likes his little spot of whiskey every Saturday night. You follow me?
Yep.
And he likes his beer a couple times during the week or more. You follow me? Mm-hmm. And he'll like his rugby game. And enjoy that. And just completely and totally love your father and love your mother and honor them. Now, of course, they've given up a few little things since I saw them. Now, when you can remember your mother cleaning your bottom when you pooped your pants when you're 2 years old, and remember your father carrying you on his neck, pointing out the different cattle and the animals around the farm. And when you can remember that with full perception, with nothing but total gratitude for the fact that you've got a mother and father that cares, with that type of perception, then nothing will be withheld from you. But we start out with our bodies, we start out with our families, we start out in that order. Now you're very aware of your body. But now we need to be aware of our roots, our DNA. And you can't go any further than your father and your mother. And once you have done that, and you have full memory of your lifetime, then we go from that point. I'm talking about full memory, where you sit down and you force yourself to look at all those things that you have resisted because it kept you from doing the things you wanted to do. You got ticked off because the things that you wanted to do weren't the things that they wanted you to do. And there's a lot of resistances there. Okay? And when you can love that with full perception, And this is the same thing that can go for every single person in this room. And suddenly you can remember nursing at your mother's breast with full perception. And remember how much you loved her. And you can remember holding your father's finger on your first little untidy steps. And remember how much strength that big finger in your little tiny hand gave you. At that point of time, you'll start having the ability to perceptualize properly. Most people don't want to honor their mother and their father. Most people want to be free of being responsible for this body and this space and this time. And they want to find a shortcut and a short fix for learning how to master the secrets of the universe, and there aren't any. There's no quick fix.
I guess this is my lesson because I've found a shortcut to everything else in life, huh?
I think everyone has tried them.
Okay, I'll pass on the second question. I need to think about this one. I'll talk to you after lunch.
Okay.